What's up, guys? Welcome to a very special video. Today will be my first ever collab with Zent Rose here. I'm sure a lot of you guys who are following my channel, there's a good chance you know who this guy is. I'm in LA for the week and I'm reviewing a bunch of cars, so I thought it'd be cool to do sort of a comparison between a 350Z, an AP2 S2000, a Mazda FD RX7. I think that in the 10 to 15 grand range, the 350Z HR is one of the best driver's cars you can have. In the $25,000 range, AP2 S2000, and then in the $35,000 range, a really clean FD RX7. And then we're gonna throw in a wild card at the end that's very different from the other three, but also at the same time offers a lot of what those other three can do. And so Zent and I are gonna just take turns driving each car and just talk about the driving dynamics and what we think they represent in terms of market value in 2021. So this car is a 2008 Nissan 350Z, basically bone stock. It has the HR high revving motor, a little over 300 horsepower, and this is the first time you've ever driven one of these, right?
First time I've driven a 350Z. I've driven a 370, but never a 350.
Okay,
so.
They're very, very similar feeling cars, but this one I think is a little bit more raw analog.
I like it. It seems like you turn in and it feels pretty stable. I was surprised to learn that the suspension is relatively stock.
Yeah.
You said he just had a sway bar done?
That's right.
He told me that he got it for, what was it?
8 grand.
8 grand.
I mean, this is back when they were actually 8 grand. Nowadays, they're not 8 grand. And I think that's the other point, is that all 4 of the cars we're reviewing today are kind of appreciating.
Yes.
The thing I love about the 350Z, and just Z cars in general, is they have that very, very natural front engine rear drive dynamic. Yes, you are a little bit traction limited, but they're so easy to just control with the throttle once you get the back end to step out. And especially in a car with a relatively long wheelbase like this, is the easiest to just hop into and drive close to its limit almost right away.
Right. Definitely. Yeah, you can definitely feel that setup when you're turning in here. And you were saying that this is the HR version, which has a higher revving motor.
The HR model supposedly really improves the reliability of the engine, and it gives you more of that top end. It gives you an extra 15-20 horsepower. And
so that's another point, is that this is what, the biggest displacement that we have in the group today?
Yes, actually by far the biggest displacement.
Yeah, so one of the guys that I work with was talking about, he has a 350Z, he's a big fan of them, and he was talking about how you can boost them and make enormous power.
Yeah.
And so I think the displacement angle here is important for some people that are looking to go that route.
True. If you're like a tuner, you want to make your car 500 wheel horsepower, this car might be the easiest out of the bunch today to get to that point.
Right. Okay, so we're third year, 5,000 RPM, and it's a nice pull, a nice amount of power. It's not a mind-bending amount of power, but it's more than enough to have fun on a road like this.
You're not going to get pushed into the back of your seat, but for like 15 grand, is any car besides, what, a C5 Corvette going to do that?
Right.
I don't think so.
Yeah. And the power builds pretty linearly.
It builds very linearly. It just adds to that whole predictability factor of this car. Everything about it has a nice predictable feel. The steering, the way you can control the slip angle in the back.
Yeah.
Everything is just very, very, very forgiving. And what do you think of the transmission of this car? I think that is actually one of the weak points of the car for me.
I'm having a little trouble adapting to it.
It's high effort.
Yeah, a little high effort. If you rev match perfectly, it's fine. If you screw up a little bit, it is a little high effort. But it's not an S2000.
Yeah, I mean, nothing is, right? I've reviewed like 120 cars maybe, and still nothing comes close to the S2000 in terms of stock gearbox.
Yeah, that thing, it's just you remember it forever.
Yeah, it's just perfect.
Yeah.
But less on the S2000 now. We have one to drive in a couple minutes.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. Did not want to go into gear there.
Yeah.
Okay.
Definitely a clunky gearbox.
I see what you're saying.
Yeah, even just riding shotgun, I can just feel the adhesion of the tires getting close to that limit so easily. It's not a peaky car whatsoever.
Yeah. And these are stock shocks with 94,000
I think
miles.
so, yeah.
They're damping pretty well.
Yeah.
Like it's not bad.
I would say if you can find a nice, well taken care of HR, it's absolutely worth the money. In that price range, 5 years ago, I would have said hands down S2000, but you just can't find them in good condition for that price anymore. It's a car that requires more of a delicate touch. If you're into that, that's great. I know I am. Obviously, you are too. You have an S2000 and a Lotus. But when it comes to just having a really easy car to drive hard, that's a really good learning tool for front engine rear drive dynamics. Between this and like an E46 M3, I'm not sure if there's any other better cars out there.
You said Corvette earlier, but I was getting some BMW vibes in this.
Yeah,
I don't know if you do, but it does satisfy that blend of quiet and comfortable on the road, but able to haul ass when you want it to.
Exactly.
And that's what I like about it. And so from that perspective, it is a good driver's car, because if you have people like in your family who are sensitive to the loud, noisy cars, this will pass.
It's a nice compromise.
Yeah. So
I think the last time I drove this car, the way I summed it up is it feels like 80% of an E46 M3 for half the price, essentially.
Yeah.
So from that perspective, you are getting a bargain.
Yeah, that's not a bad way to put it.
Really excited to hop into the S2000 now. It's very near and dear to my heart, as it is to you, as it is to a lot of people. So it'll be good to just hop in it is bone stock, literally bone stock, 12,000 miles, minty condition, and we'll see what happens. I will never turn down an offer to drive an S2000. I feel like the whole reason I made this video is because it was just another opportunity to drive an S2000. You've owned 8, you said?
Yes.
I've owned 3. I've driven probably 30. I always come back to this car, but I have to say I've never driven one like this. Rio Yellow Pearl AP2 with less than 13,000 miles on the odometer. This is about as minty fresh of an S2K experience you can possibly get. And so the whole appeal of this car is this right here. And this isn't even the AP1, so it's a lowly 8,200 RPM rev limiter. But still, that is just such an intoxicating sound. There's really nothing to speak of until VTEC engages at 6,000. That's like the essence of driving the S2000. It's largely dominated, in my opinion, by the engine. That said, it has a chassis to go with it. It's a very well-balanced car. When you push it to its limit, it does feel a little bit like VTEC-y in a way. The point where it breaks away, you have to be ready to catch it. It's not like the 350 where you can practically oversteer it with one hand.
Right, and when you tune it and you stiffen up the suspension and dial in your spring rates and you're coming into a corner, you can pretty much steer with the throttle. Yeah. And it feels like it will rotate similarly to a mid-engine car. And it's one of the few front-engine cars I've driven that exhibits this. When you try to explain this to non-car people, they don't get the S2000, and that's one of the frustrating things about it, and it's one of the reasons that you keep going back to it, and it's because that driving experience is so great, and the proof here is in the resale. People are buying them.
People are finally starting to realize after all these years, like, what a special car this is. It's not a car that to a non-car enthusiast makes any sort of sense whatsoever. Like a V8 Mustang for 25 grand would absolutely smoke this.
Right.
But that's not the point of the car. And people are finally starting to realize that. And the resale of these cars has gone up just so dramatically. And even in the past year, I think I did a video just less than 1 year ago on whether the appreciating S2000 is still worth it in 2020. And I feel like I almost have to do another video now because they're just so much more expensive than the last time I talked about it.
Yeah, it's crazy watching the auction prices on these.
Like Bring a Trailer, you regularly see minty S2000s, even AP1s go for over 40, sometimes 50 grand nowadays.
Yeah, and what was when you bought your first one, what did you pay for it?
Like that's the thing, so I bought my first one in 2013.
Okay.
It's an 04, just like this, 60,000 miles.
Yeah.
I paid 15 grand for it.
Oh, wow.
I think about that in today's market, it would be at least 10 grand more.
Jeez. The first S2000 I bought was $6,000.
$6,000.
And my friend got one, he got an AP1 for $4,000.
How is that possible?
I don't know.
Salvage title? Like,
mine was clean title. It had minor accident damage in the front. It had 147,000 miles.
wow.
And that was the one that I completely stripped out for the racetrack.
Okay.
And I did the valve spring retainers
Okay.
and coilovers and beat the hell out of that car, and it just kept going.
I mean, that's the thing. Even if you go with an AP1, technically it's not as reliable or sturdy as AP2. The engine does have a few weak points. It's so well documented. You just do the valve retainers, you do the banjo bolts, basically good to go. Baffled oil pan, like,
Right.
these things are easy to do. You can even do them yourself.
Seeing the prices now, it makes me hesitant to buy one again, because
Yeah.
it's like, is it really worth it? And
Is it really worth it?
I have a hard time with it. So what do you think right now? Is it really worth it?
I mean, look at the smile on my face.
Yeah.
I mean, look, like, we're going flat out on this road,
Right.
you know, for a solid 15 seconds, and we're not going that fast, but it feels like you're going so fast. It gives you this sensation of speed, even if you're not actually going that fast. So you can actually enjoy it on a canyon road. Like, you don't have to push it to the very limit on a racetrack.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas if you got something like, I don't know, like a Camaro 1LE, 450 horsepower, like, you can't reasonably use that on the road without just putting yourself and others in danger.
Yeah.
Right? I will say, in stock form, brakes, not the most confidence-inspiring brakes I've ever felt. I think they are a little bit undersized. The suspension, a little bit floaty, you know, especially with the AP2 spring rates.
Going back and forth between AP1, AP2, and even the CR, the AP1 was my favorite car.
Really?
Yes. The power band is so narrow in
Yeah.
the AP2. And when you tune it, it fixes that. But the AP1, there's something about it for me that I like that one
Yeah.
a lot. So I've gotten some messages from people, I think in Europe, they said that they continue to have a 9,000 RPM redline later on. Is that right?
I think in Japan and Europe, maybe some other places, in 04, whereas the US got the F22, those places actually retained the F20 engine. This literally feels like it just rolled off the showroom floor, like in 04.
Yeah, and it smelled new when we got in it.
Yeah, it's like, wow.
You almost feel bad sitting in it. And you crossed over 13,000 miles now.
Oh, shoot. It's totaled.
Yeah.
I don't think I'll ever drive this nice of an S2000 again.
Yeah, because they're all going to be in a collector showroom somewhere.
Right. I mean, honestly, this one I would say is close to collector grade. There are a few scuffs on the outside, but nothing that you can't fix. I don't know what you think, but Rio Yellow is, I think, the best color for the S2000.
Yes.
Before I even knew how to drive stick, before I even knew what rear-wheel drive meant, I was reading magazines. The one they had in the magazine was yellow. I think Spa Yellow because it was an AP1, but yellow was always like my childhood dream color for this car.
I love how the Rio Yellow looks in the sun. Like when you
Yeah.
get parked out there, it sort of shifts. It's similar to like an exotic car paint.
Yeah.
So.
It's a really nice color. And I know right now we're driving with the top up, but the moment you pop that top down, it's like a whole new world.
Mm-hmm.
It's all of a sudden becomes way less claustrophobic if you're a little taller. I mean, you throw an exhaust on this thing and you drive it top down through the canyons, I don't think there's a better sounding four-cylinder engine in the world.
One interesting thing I note about this, because I'm thinking about it compared to the Lotus, I know we're not in the Lotus yet, but we have a fair amount of space between us.
Yeah.
And the Lotus, I think we're going to be shoulder to shoulder.
Yes.
So.
Totally. This is a car you can actually sort of daily. So in that regard, you know, you're paying less for this car, but you can enjoy it more of the time. All right, so 2 cars down, 2 cars to go. I think the next one will be very interesting. It's a car I've driven a few times, not this particular one, but I've driven, I think, 4 different FD RX7s now. And it's going to be a fun one. Have you ever driven one of those?
I have never driven one of
Okay,
those.
well, it's going to be a good experience.
Cool. Oh yeah, okay. Oh, there we go. We got the pop-ups.
Pop-ups.
Cool.
Okay.
There's the lag that he's talking about.
A little bit of lag.
That's pretty good, though. This thing is gonna be fun. So this is my first time driving an RX-7.
RX-7, right?
Always wanted to drive one. We got a lot of special instructions on how to get in and out of the car.
The door handles have the classic, they'll rip right off if you use them as oh shit handles.
So modification-wise, is the suspension?
Yeah, so he gave me the rundown, the owner. We're going with JRZ RS1s.
Oh, nice.
Lots of suspension travel. The car's actually raised like basically stock height. Stock engine with stock turbos, twin turbo, moved from a sequential setup to a parallel setup. So there's a little bit more lag, but you get more top end power. So he said somewhere around 300 to 330 horsepower at the wheels. Sticky tires, Advan 8008R, 63,000 miles, basically original, except for the paint. It's a 94 touring model, by the way, so it does have the sunroof.
This is a blast.
Pretty sick, right?
Wow.
The FD is definitely a special car.
So down low, like, there's boost lag, and then it hits and it builds. It feels sort of like an older turbo car.
Yeah.
It reminds me of this old Porsche I had, an old 89 944 Turbo S.
Okay.
Once that came on to boost, it just pulled, and it's the same feeling.
Same feeling, right?
The other thing that I noticed about this is that it doesn't feel super heavy. The car feels light. What is the curb weight on this?
It's a 2,800 pound car, so same, almost exact same curb weight as an S2000.
Okay, that's where that's coming from. Yeah, and the way it turns in is great too.
Hydraulic steering rack, right? Tons of feedback.
Yeah, this is great.
So it's by far the most modified car out of the four we have here today. But it's still a good representation of what you can do to an FD, barely doing any mods to it. That's quick.
Yeah, I didn't even rev it all the way out. That was 6,500.
These redline at around 8,000, so they're pretty up there.
Even when we're hitting bumps and sort of skipping over the pavement, the tires really grip, so we could be carrying tons more speed through here.
Oh,
but
yeah.
It feels like he did a really great job setting this up.
This is the best, even though I'm not driving it right now, this is the best setup FD that I've personally felt.
Okay.
A lot of it's the suspension.
Okay.
These JRZs are so good.
Yeah. I put the RS1s on the Lotus, the first Lotus I had.
Oh, really?
Yeah. There's some animosity towards you talking about JRZs because they're so expensive.
They are, I mean, you get what you pay for, though.
Right.
There we go.
Wow.
I think in a straight line, this is comfortably the fastest car here.
Yeah, this thing just rips.
You know, I really like the fact that he changed from sequential to parallel turbos. It really gets rid of that kind of awkward torque dip in the middle. It's more lag, yes, but it's more predictable lag.
Yeah. As we're staying up in the RPM range, there's really not much perceptible lag. You see, I get on the throttle and it picks up.
It just goes, yeah.
Can't see the gauge really.
Yes. Oh man.
Wow.
Just feels so good.
Yeah, that's great.
Suspension, the power. Seems like the brakes are holding up pretty well.
Yes.
This car feels really well balanced.
And the shifter is a little bit high effort, but it goes right in, so it's not too bad.
You can't speed shift it like you can in S2000.
Okay, yeah.
And it is a 5-speed, so the ratios are a little longer. I mean, so people talk about reliability, right, as one of the big issues with the rotary engine, especially with the FD, since it is twin turbo. Yeah, it's true. Like, it's going to take more effort to keep these cars running than a Honda or a Nissan.
Mm-hmm.
I've never owned a rotary, but from what I've been told, if you take the proper preventative measures on a daily basis when you drive the car, it can actually be more reliable than the internet makes them out to be. In the $35,000 range, this is a really special car still, because it's definitely still an appreciating asset if you take care of it.
Do you think that you can get this one set up for $35K, or?
I don't think so. I think this one, with all the mods, if you were to take a stock one and make it like this, you'd be looking at more like 40 plus.
This would be a bargain at 35.
At 35, I agree.
Yeah. It's a fun car.
But I think it's possible to find one with a little more mileage for 30, 35. Drop another $5,000 into it maybe, and you have a pretty sick car. Here's a real question, right? Do you think this is worth $10,000 more of a driving experience over a similarly modified S2000?
I would go with the S2000.
Still?
That would be my preference.
Okay.
I mean, you're dealing with boost here. It's a different.
It's a totally different animal.
Yeah. So I'm hesitant to answer that like definitively and say that one is better. But to me, maybe it's an emotional answer for me because I just like the S2000 so much. One thing he said about this car was this was his dream car, and so buying this for him is very important. And that's gonna carry some weight. Yeah, for sure.
I think that is the case for a lot of FD owners. Like, this is one of the Halo 90s JDM cars. S2000 came in an era that's not quite considered the Halo JDM era. It's still a great car, but it's still modern enough to be considered maybe a little less analog than something like an FD. I can tell you're having a good time.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm just enjoying it. This thing is great. If you have the budget for it and the money isn't an issue, then maybe I would take this over the S2000.
It's a little bit more of an event when you drive it.
Yeah, definitely. We're talking about the S2000 at 25K, right? We're not talking, or you're saying if you took a 25K and modified it up to this point.
If you spent the same amount of money on mods on both cars, but this car came out to be 10 grand more than the S2000.
Okay.
Is it worth the extra 10 grand? Let's say putting heritage and like the legendary status of this car aside for a moment. Purely talking about driving dynamics, I still think the S2000 can hold its own, even if they were the same price. I think the S2000 is slower, obviously, has a lot less power, less tunability.
Yes.
But when you're really just pushing it in the corners, going flat out, there's something about the S2000 that I haven't felt in any other car. I've said this many times before. I'm sure my viewers are sick of me saying this, but it's a very, very unique car. This car, I feel like, takes... The rotary engine's definitely unique, but it takes some driving dynamics from various different cars. It's kind of like a amalgamation of different cars that I've experienced, whereas the S2000 feels like nothing else.
I guess I'd like to actually push it in order to know how it will behave. The limits on this feel so high that I really don't know.
Yeah, it does have quite high limits, especially with these tires.
Yeah, going over some things that should upset the car, it just stays planted. The tires just dig in, so I really have no idea. It's just sticking.
Yeah, I will say a lot of that is a suspension. I've driven some FDs on much lesser suspension and they didn't feel nearly this good. If you care about build quality and refinement, this is not the car for you. You can see those pop-ups kind of like wiggling in the distance there.
Right.
Door handles are about to fall. There's lots of squeaks and rattles. Put all that aside though, this is like one of the best driving experiences you can have. All right, so those are the 3 FR layout cars we wanted to try today at those price points. Let's hop into the wild card. And this is a car that actually you own, one that's almost identical. So let's hop in and just see if it makes even more sense to spend that extra 5-10 grand. 05 Elise, naturally aspirated, manual wind-up windows, no power of anything basically. Super lightweight, mid-engine, rear-wheel drive, Toyota 2ZZ, 190 horsepower or something. All about that raw ethos of lightweight means fast and fun. This is by far the most hardcore car here, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, I would.
You can tell on camera, like the audio in this is going to be absolute crap compared to the other cars. There is no sound editing in here. I mean, our elbows are literally rubbing when I shift.
Yeah, and they actually had to bypass some crash standards to get this.
Really?
Yeah, it's on the door over there on the hinge. If you open it up, they'll say that it has some...
Like a disclaimer?
Yeah.
So basically what they're saying is don't crash, because if you crash, you're probably dead.
So they did put an airbag system in the US once. If you
okay.
If you look at the videos of our friends over in the UK, they don't have that airbag on some of them. In my mind, I love this car. As I go through and buy other cars, this is the one car I always think about.
Even over an S2000?
I think about it over an S2000.
Wow, okay.
And it just is a magnificent, to me, it's a magnificent drive. And a lot of people don't agree with that.
What would you say that it's a car that you can only enjoy in a small, very like limited scenario where we're out on a fairly smooth canyon road, you can really wind it out. Is that like really the only place you can enjoy it?
No, I mean, I drive it around the neighborhood. I go to the grocery store with it.
Really?
I daily drove my other Lotus, and I loved it. I had the touring pack, so it had leather and a little bit more sound deadening. But I took the top off. When the top's open, you know, it's similar to the S2000. It changes the whole experience.
Like some of those squeaks and rattles that are really annoying when the top is up, take it off and they all kind of just disappear.
Yeah, and you know what? I put JRZs on my first Lotus.
Okay.
The rattles went away.
Really?
It was a completely different car.
Okay.
And so after the JRZs, I drove it everywhere.
Good to know.
At the time I was graduating grad school, I had to pay my tuition, and it was easy, and I was buying a place, and so I had to sell the Lotus.
Yeah.
And I've never regretted selling a car. And the Lotus is the one car
that you regret?
that I was upset about selling it. So I've been looking for one for a very long time, and I just bought the one that I was looking for a month ago.
Okay.
So
nice. I think the Lotus is to you as the S2000 is to me.
Yeah.
Don't get me wrong, I love Lotuses as well. Or Loti, is that the plural?
I don't know what the plural is, yeah.
The one thing that stands out above all other cars is Lotus has the best steering. Like, nothing I've driven comes close except for maybe a well-sorted weight reduction accurate NSX. That might be the only thing that comes close.
Okay.
But let's start to push this a little harder and remind myself why I actually really love Lotuses. BBTI. Oh my god, that is good.
See, if you're gonna say purely driver's car, you're not gonna say that that's better than an S2000.
Yeah, it's better. It's better. Okay, I admit it. Get that mid-engine balance.
The other thing about it is all these cars today are going away from the manual transmission.
Yes.
And so like I drove the new C8 and it's great, but there's no manual transmission. So
this is just really just back to basics. There's no complexities with this car at all. Naturally aspirated, no forced induction. I mean, the one thing it has that you could call a driver aid, I guess, is ABS. That's it. There's no traction control, stability control, power steering, nothing. It's just you in the car. You're feeling everything. The seat is extremely uncomfortable if you're daily driving it, but the upside is that you feel just everything come up through the chassis, just like up your spine. You just feel what the car's doing. But the one thing from a driving dynamics perspective that I don't like about most Lotuses is the shifter. This one has a stock shifter, very rubbery, very vague throws, long throws. It's low effort, but it's low confidence. Like you're not really quite sure what you're doing. The Sector 111 aftermarket shifter I've tried on multiple Lotus cars. It really makes a huge difference. But no Lotus shifter comes close to the feeling of an S2000 shifter. You barely need to even touch the brakes in this car. It's so light. It just carries so much speed through the corners. Bumps too well.
No, yeah. The sport package is very rough. It has a lot more. Have you driven a base suspension one too?
I think I have, yeah.
Okay.
It was a lot more comfortable.
Yes, they're more comfortable. This one has more compression damping, so the steering response is a little bit better.
Okay. Yeah, this steering response is second to none. Most confidence-inspiring car out of the four, I'd say. The rawness of this car is really the selling point. Like, I know I'm complaining about it. I sound like an old man right now.
Yeah.
If you like rawness, it just doesn't get more raw than this unless you get like some kind of kit car. So we've driven 4 cars back to back. Do you think the Lotus is worth the premium over all those other cars?
It depends on what you're looking for. If this is a 4th car, then it's worth the premium in my mind. If it's a 2nd or 3rd car, it's too focused.
Too focused.
That would be my take. Like if you have other cars that are comfy, this is my pick. But if it's your only car,
I could completely agree with you. The fourth car. I've never even thought about it that way. Like no one says, oh, it would be a good fourth car. People be like, oh, it's a good second or third car, but this is definitely fourth car material. I would say you can't really go wrong with any of these cars. In this order, it's cheapest is the least wrong. I think that wraps up the video. Really fun to do a collab with you, Zent. I don't know what you think, but my conclusion is these cars are all great given their price range. I think if you added 5 to 10 grand to the price of any of these cars, all of a sudden it starts to make a lot less sense. It really is, you get what you pay for. That said, thanks guys for watching. If you liked the video, give it a thumbs up. Let us know what you think about these cars. If you've driven all four, I'd love to know your thoughts. Do you think the Lotus is worth 3 times, 4 times the 350Z? Do you think the FD is worth 10K more than S2000? Thanks for watching, and see you guys next time.